Final 8 teams on our tiered list. You can check out the other 24 teams in their various categories across the podcast, wherever you get yours. Do remember to like and subscribe to the Irish NFL Show on whichever is your favourite platform. We round off our final 8, Kieran, with the young guns, beginning with the young guns in Green Bay, a team that greatly impressed down the stretch last year. Jordan Love's performances earned him a record contract. They've got their guy again, third straight quarterback in a row without missing in Green Bay. Does it continue on an upward trajectory though at Lambeau?
No, I don't see it happening. No, I've never bought into the Jordan love. I just don't get it. I mean, a couple of decent games. There's just not enough body of work to A, justify the contract, and B, put all the stock into him. I think it's gonna be a down year for the Pack. I don't see them progressing very much. I think it was a real flash in the pan. The contrast with Watson, who I think is the real deal. I'm not sold on Jordan Love. I haven't seen enough from him. Everyone talks about that big playoff win, but that was more to do with the Cowboys just completely collapsing than, obviously the Packers put it on them. But that was just an epic disaster from Dallas. I'm not subscribing to Jordan Love, and I think it's going to be a 7-win season for that's my big shock. 7 wins for Green Bay.
No, I'm sure a lot of Bears fans would love if that does bear out into reality. What do you think, though? Unfortunately, from a Bears perspective, ownership of the Bears transferred neatly from Rodgers to Love last year, which is part of his appeal in Green Bay. And beating the Bears always goes down well in Lambeau.
I think when Kieran was talking, my fingers were crossed that everything he was saying was going to come true. But unfortunately, I don't think it is. Although I do agree with him on Jordan Love. I'm on record myself saying in a couple of shows that he's not. It's not complete yet on whether he is this superstar quarterback or not. He's had one season where it started iffy and it got really good, and the signs for Green Bay are absolutely positive for him. But there needs to be a much bigger body of work, before you can really be jumping on that bandwagon of, he is that quarterback now. We'll see how that goes. I think a big part of it is head coach. I don't like saying this, but I love that head coach. I think he does such a great job calling plays, scheming up everything. It's tough to say that. But then you look through their team, there's such young weapons on that team that look like they're just going to go up and up. And if they do continue to trend in that way, then I think this team is going to be a problem in the North for years to come. So the question mark I do have is on Love. It looks positive, but we'll see where that goes. Everything else around them, I think, looks really, really good and looks like it's there for the long haul, as well as some really good coaching. So I think they'll probably get 10 wins. So I'll go 7-10 for them.
Yeah, I'm going to go 10 wins for the Packers. I'm going to put them in the 10-13 category. I said they make the playoffs last year, and that did bear out in the end. I know I hear what you're both saying. It's a small sample of games for Love, and depending on which side of the spectrum you fall on, you either see Jordan Love as the poor man's Aaron Rodgers or as the rich man's Brock Purdy. Is he one of those guys that kind of flatters to deceive? But I just can't get away from the coaching. I love the way Matt LaFleur coaches offense. It's amazing how he springs these guys, leaks tight ends, gets people free. He just seems to be able to get guys open in a phone box. It's majestic what he does, and I think, like with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, it's a very quarterback-friendly offense. I don't think Jordan Love has to be Aaron Rodgers for this team to fly. I think they've got a huge amount of talent defensively as well, which they should do. They have a lot of first-round picks invested on that side of the ball, which famously was one of the reasons why Aaron Rodgers and Brian Gutekunst didn't get along in Green Bay, and ultimately why Rodgers saw the door. But that was the right move. It was the right thing for Green Bay to do. If they have their guy now in the DC spot, and Joe Barry paid the price last year, again, another thing we talked about with Karma Vitali on the podcast with her, which is worth checking out if you haven't heard it already. That was the one thing that needed to be fixed. I think it probably has been fixed, and I do see the Packers getting to double-digit wins. I have them in the 10-13 category. Brian?
I agree with you, Connor. I think they're going to win the division, to be honest. I think you've touched on a lot of my points. They're such a young team that I think will only benefit from that playoff run in terms of the nature of what happened to them in losing in San Francisco in a game which I felt they really should have won. They kind of let that one slip, and who knows thereafter. And I think they'll come back this season. We touched on the head coach there; he's a fantastic head coach. Like Morgan, the first round pick, got it 100%. They want to protect the quarterback. McKinney comes in; they've struggled in safety for large parts. Comes in from Giants, big contract. Arguably again another young, dynamic player that can really settle into this team. I think this team has a lot of talent that can really go a long way this year, and even put it up to some of the bigger teams come playoffs. So for me, it's 10-13 win team.
Sorry, Connor, just on that, I think we're in trouble now because that's two Bears fans who pretty much came out and said they love Matt LaFleur. I don't know. I think we'll be ostracized, or if we have any Bears cards, I think we may hand them back in. But look, you just have to, when you see a team like that, you just have to be honest about it.
And, no problem with that. Like, you watch football
built it the right way.
You watch football because you love football. You want to see football played in the right way. Like, the way he coaches is magnificent. It's an example of the way a team should be constructed and the way a team should play offense. I've no problem saying that. Much though, of course, it doesn't work out in Chicago's favor. They're a great team to watch. You have to give it to them. Right, that's enough Packers praise for one night. We'll go back to Florida because we have one remaining Florida team to be judged. It's in Tampa. Kieran, how do you see the Bucs faring this year?
I think they're going to have another good year. I mean, it's pretty much same as it was last year with Evans and Baker, and they're really going to make hay from a terrible division. I can see them beating up on everybody in that division. I like 7 to 9 wins on the high end, maybe 10, but I'm going to go 7 and 9. I think they're going to win the division at 9 and 8. Again, it's just attrition in that division, just taking wins off each other. But Rashad White, a running back, is a phenomenal talent. I think he's going to be a really good player for him this year. And when you have Mike Evans out there, I mean, anything's possible. So I'm going to give it 7 to 9 on the high end. I do like closer to 9 wins.
Yeah, I agree. I think this team, let's not forget, still has a little bit of that championship DNA in it. I know there's been a lot of turnover, but there's still a lot of guys there who know what it takes to get to the very end of the line and to deliver. I do worry about the loss of Canales, who was the guy, in many ways chiefly responsible for Baker's renaissance there and for that going so well. Him going to Carolina is a big loss. But if we're saying, as we have done, that Panthers finished between 4 and 6, Saints finished between 4 and 6, we're not exactly getting carried away with the Falcons. It is a weird division. It's not a great division. I don't find it too hard to see the Bucs getting into 7 to 9. I'm very comfortable with that. No.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. 7 to 9. I'm not the biggest Bucs fan in the world, but Kieran mentioned it. That division is what it is. I mean, I think the Falcons will be okay, but the other two teams, I think the Bucs can take wins from. So I think they'll have enough anyway to get into that 7 to 9 category.
Brian, does the pirate ship set sail at full sheet, or are they going to be walking the plank?
Walking the plank in the sense I don't believe they'll win the division. I think they will find their way into the 7 and 9 category because it's very similar to the nature of the conversation on the Falcons and everything that comes with this division. It's not a strong division, but I do have the Saints winning the division. Bucs running them close at 7 and 9. 7-2-9, as in that category, as opposed to a record.
From the NFC South, we move across to the AFC South. Texans, I'll start here. Easy one to call for me. I think it's only on the up and up for them. I don't see them be a team that comes off and has a difficult second season. I think there's just too much going right there in the coaching and the quarterback. Obviously, phenomenal season from CJ Stroud. I do think they had work to do and they had people to add based on the way they were handled in the playoffs. I think they've done what they needed to do to get to genuine contender status. That's where I see them. I think they're going to win the division. I don't think they'll get 14 to 17 wins, but I'd see them comfortably getting 12 or 13. No.
Yeah, right with you there. I think in the 10 to 13 category, I think, you look at what they have there. Nico Collins had a great season last year. Tank Dell was having such a good season until he got the injury. And then you bring Stephon Diggs into that. And then Joe Mixon, who can be a really productive running back, has come in as well. And you have CJ Stroud there. And for me, D'Amico Ryan's done such a great job last year. I don't know how he wasn't coach of the year, to be honest, in my opinion. I think he's done such a great job turning that team around.
Kevin Stefanski had 5 different quarterbacks and still made the playoffs. I think that's why he didn't win coach of the year.
Yeah, fair enough. But I love the whole setup there. I love the way they built it up. And I think 10 to 13 wins is definitely within target for them. I think they're head and shoulders above everyone else in that division.
Kieran.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing much to add. I mean, I think it's the best wide receiver room in the league, to be honest. I think CJ Stroud's the real deal. I really do. And I think it's going to be fun to watch the battle between them and Jacksonville going back and forth all season. I think Jacksonville might get on the wrong side of that. I think 10 to 13 is definitely on the board for Houston.
Brian, what do you think?
Full house, yeah. I certainly think they're well capable of getting these 10 wins. I did say a few weeks ago on the show that I'm not as high on the Diggs trade and the Mixon signing as a lot of people are. I think there's scenarios there, in particular with Diggs, where things could go wrong. But that's ultimately down to the nature of this head coach and whether he can manage Diggs, because we all know he can be disruptive at times. But again, if they're winning games and they're winning the division, he'd be very pleased. But still, kind of slightly concerns me. He has a manner that can be a bit off-putting at times. This team should be winning 10 games, though.
Brian, we go straight back to you in Buffalo. You mentioned a little bit earlier that you thought the Bills were going to come off a bit. Dare I suggest you might not see them in the 10 to 13 category where they've lived for the past couple of seasons?
Yeah, I don't see them in there. And again, we're looking at a graph here that may go out or may not on our social channels, but I would have had the Dolphins up there in the 10 to 13 alongside the Jets, which in turn means the Bills aren't winning. There's not enough games, not enough wins in the division to go around. So I think 7-9. I think once I challenge the Diggs trade, like, I can understand why Buffalo were happy to see him off. There's been too much of a distraction over the course of the last few years. Gabe Davis walks. They take a wide receiver in the first round, which was actually early in the second round because they dropped out of the first round. And they've lost some players in defense, and they've been kind of crippled in a certain extent around the cap this year. So it'll be interesting to see if the head coach can galvanise them to put a real stellar season together. I think the other two are too talented this year, and I think it's a 7-9 team for me in that category.
No, what do you think? Can they keep the show on the road, or are they going to take an off year this year?
I think they'll just be slightly off this year. I think I'd agree with Brian there in 7-9. They've had so much turnover. They've lost a lot of talent out of there. You look at that wide receiver room now, and maybe it could be good, maybe not. Obviously Josh Allen is the X factor there. He could maybe take a good receiver and make him a really good receiver or a great receiver. But still, that's a lot to be put on his shoulders. I think just a lot of change, and 7-9 for me. I have them in that 9 or 10 kind of wins, and I'm kind of going with caution here and say maybe they'll just drop back that little bit to 7-9.
Kieran, unlike the rest of us, you didn't have the Jets in the 10 to 13 category, and that they got there on majority decisions. So do you see more of those wins going to Buffalo than maybe the lads have?
Yeah, I do. I actually have the Bills 10 to 13. I think they're going to have enough. Basically, I'm not going to rate the Pats or the Jets as a contender, so I can see those wins going to Miami and Buffalo. Like we said, losing Diggs, it looks on paper like a really bad loss, but I think we all know that was good for Buffalo. Josh Allen's going to have a great year. I just, my only concern is the head coach and having Joe Brady on the sideline looking over his shoulder, because if they don't do, we've talked about windows in the NFL, and I think this is the very last embers of that window for the Bills. If they don't do anything this year, then that is it. They're going to clean house. Maybe bring Joe Brady in. I'm not sure, but they're getting into the prime Josh Allen years now, and they're going to have to start filling him with some real talent. But I see him getting to 10 wins, maybe the low end of 9, but I can see 10 wins and a wild card spot.
Yeah, I saw somebody suggesting, I think it was Bill Barnwell, that this is the time that they should make a crazy play for Devontae Adams. Don't be letting that talent leak out. Put somebody great around Josh Allen while you still have maybe one last chance to do it before the band gets broken up. I can see the logic for that. Without that, I have to kind of go with the majority here, and I think Buffalo slipped down to that 7-9 win. I still think they comfortably get to 9 wins. I find it hard to make the case for them to get to 10 to 13. I still think they will get to 9, but what that does and whether that's enough for them to make the playoffs is a whole nother story. It's to Detroit we go next. Kieran, a team that wasn't too far short last season. They're no longer the underdogs, as we were saying the other night with Carmen Vitali. They're very much now contenders, or such they were last year, and a team looking to make the next step, which for them is the Super Bowl potentially. Are they good enough to do that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they bar a couple of fluke plays, they were in the Super Bowl last year. I love everything about Detroit. The blue collar vibes around the team. Dan Campbell is the kind of coach you want to play for. I love the talent they have. I think they just, we can all talk about not going for the field goals. He's probably going to learn a little bit of lesson from that. But I just love the talent they have. I can see them going back again. Give me 10 wins.
Yeah, I don't think they get to 14 to 17 because I just don't think the wins are there in the division. It's too tough, but it's 12-13 easy for me. I think they'll duke it out with the Packers, and I could go either way on who wins the division, but the lines will be right there for me. No.
Yeah, I actually think these are the class of the North for this season. Anyway, you just look at the talent on both sides of the ball. For me, the biggest issue they had last year was that secondary, the cornerbacks. Well, they went out and they absolutely sorted that out with bringing in Carlton Davis, and then what they did in the draft, bringing in 2 cornerbacks. And I think they've just really solidified that position group. Everywhere else, there's just talent, offense, defense. There's just some really, really good players all over it. And Dan Campbell has done a fantastic job with this team, bringing them together. The big question is, obviously, it ended so badly last season. Is there a bit of a hangover, or is that the kind of impetus to push on? And for me, I think they're strong enough with a head coach like that to push on and go again this season. So I see them in the 10 to 13 win bracket.
Brian, they were swinging digs at the Giants in practice during the week. Although there was 2 sides at it, we should say. To be fair, fines gone round, but Dan Campbell was smiling from ear to ear. He wanted to see those. He wanted to see the fight from his guys. He didn't want to see any sign of self-pity or a Super Bowl hangover.
I think he wants to make sure that these guys are still motivated to come back and have a really strong season. And second of all, that what he's preaching to them is still being listened to and adhered to in terms of what his expectation is when they go on the field, whether it's training camp, obviously the pre-season games to come, and then the season itself. They're too talented a team not to be challenging for the division. I have them in the 10 to 13 category, and I know we have Green Bay in there, so somewhere along the lines it's probably going to go amiss because there's not enough wins there potentially for both sides to find themselves, although we have seen it in the past where they take care of other teams in the division. The only thing I would say on them is we're talking about Super Bowl hangover, but sometimes Super Bowl hangover is actually the team that loses the championship game as opposed to who loses the Super Bowl. The Bengals last year was Joe Burrow got injured. They started the season 1-4, 1-5, and then they got going, and then obviously it kind of derailed because of Joe Burrow injury. Like, we have to factor in at some stage there's going to be a team here that loses a player that's crippling to their season. I'm not necessarily saying it's going to be the Lions, but it'd be interesting to see the dynamic of how they start the season and how efficient they are, and can they get off the hot start on Sunday Night Football against the Rams in a really difficult game, a repeat of the playoff game, and then it goes from there. So interesting to see how they start, and if they start the season quickly. They should be in that category, though. They're well deserving of a team to win them at that amount of games.
Right, we got 3 teams left now, and it's Super Bowl or bust for all of them. I don't think that there's any way other to phrase it than that. So really, it's not just the win-loss totals we're looking at. It's what that is a building block too for each of these teams. And we start that, Kieran, with the Baltimore Ravens, who had the Chiefs in their sights and kind of got away from what was working at the crucial time of the season, and unfortunately continued that narrative of, can Lamar Jackson really get it done in the big games?
Yeah, I mean, Zay Flowers. I mean, we remember the meltdown of that game. I mean, they had that they should have won that game. I mean, they're going to be kicking themselves from now until the season starts. I mean, that's always going to be in their minds. I love Baltimore. I love everything about the team. I love Lamar. I mean, he's a phenomenal quarterback. Derrick Henry. Zay Flowers is going to need some redemption. But just look at the defense. The defense is what really gets me. Matabik, Roquan Smith, Kyle Van Noy, Kyle Hamilton. I mean, these are all Pro Bowl players. These are all phenomenal athletes. Everything is pointed towards the Super Bowl for Baltimore right now. I can see 13 wins. I can see another MVP season for Lamar. Similar to the windows we talked about, when we start getting, free agent stuff talked about, they've got to take care of it this year, and I think they will.
Yeah, Sam Adebike in Las Vegas, as you say, what an athlete. He's an absolute specimen, a big human being, and not someone I would want pursuing me. If I was tasked with getting rid of the football quickly, you bet my time to throw would be under 2 seconds if I saw him on the other side of the line. Brian, yeah, I agree with Kieran. I don't think there's anything stopping Baltimore in the regular season. Like, yes, it's a tough division, and that maybe puts a ceiling on. I don't think you get to 14 to 17 wins in that division. I just don't think it's probably possible. But some of the statement wins they put down in the regular season last year, that is who this team is. Yeah, they probably fluffed the lines against the Chiefs, and they'll very much regret that. And you wonder, will that have any sort of a hangover? But I just don't think that's in Baltimore's culture. I think they're comfortably in it's probably 13, and maybe with a fair win, then with a couple of bounces at the ball, maybe they could get to 14 wins. I'm not going to put them there, but for me, they're very much in that category. What say you?
Yeah, I agree. 10 to 13. I wouldn't put them as high as the 14. But obviously, I wouldn't put the Bengals high in the 14. It's such a competitive division. I did a very good interview last week, podcast with Brian Wacker from the Baltimore Sun. And we spoke about the narrative going into this season, because last season, Lamar was coming in with the contract. They'd come off a playoff season. It was a difficult loss in Cincinnati, but it's a very different vibe about them this year. New defensive coordinator in Zach Orr. And yet, they still feel that they can put it all together. And I think Derrick Henry, like he spoke very highly of Derrick Henry in the sense that people feel he's off in terms of his best is behind them. But Baltimore never had a running back like Derrick Henry before. They've had very much a run game by committee, and he thinks we're going to see a different Derrick Henry. He's never played with such a strong offensive line either. So it's hard to see them not being back in the playoffs. Quinn Bet, our partner, did an enhanced over the last few days, Connor, as you're well aware, 28-1 for the Niners to play the Ravens in the Super Bowl. Like that looks like a fantastic bet to be on. It's much better than other partners out there, and that's like it strikes me at that time of Super Bowl. We saw on Christmas Day when they went into Santa Clara, comprehensively won. Probably should have been the Super Bowl. It wasn't to be. They should be back there challenging to be in the Super Bowl again this year.
And an interesting bit of symmetry that would be if that bet holds through. Of course, it's literally a decade ago that the Ravens played the 49ers in the Super Bowl in, naturally, New Orleans, where the Super Bowl will be in 2025. So let's see if that one holds true. No, round us off. Where do you see the Ravens?
Yeah, I see the Ravens in 10-13 there. They have such a good team. I mean, I look at Derrick Henry coming in. If he can hit any sort of decent form, what an addition that will be. I think Zay Flowers will bounce back from what Kieran mentioned there earlier this season. And he looks such a good player. And then you've always got the dependable Mark Andrews there, who just is one of the top tight ends in the division. Add that to, Lamar Jackson, and this team is frightening. Now, I know they've made some big changes on the offensive line, kind of 3 guys out and 3 new ones in. So it'll be interesting to see if that has any sort of impact. But still, even losing Mike McDonald, they're too good. There's too much talent there. This team will absolutely be pushing through the playoffs and will be a contender. And 10-13 wins, I think, is a fair kind of place for them to go.
Niners, Brian, if we're talking hangovers, you can make a justifiable argument as to whether San Francisco would have a major one after what happened last season. You could go the other way, though, and say you literally can't get any closer to winning a Super Bowl than they did. It's, whatever about what happened in overtime and whether you kick the field goal or not, and we've argued that one back and forth. For me, I think Kyle Shanahan should have gone for it, because you just don't put the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands and give him a chance to win, or you get what you deserve. And unfortunately, that's what happened when, bizarrely, they had actually taken their chances in normal time. And that trick play to McCaffrey, probably the exemplar of all the stuff that people said that Kyle Shanahan wouldn't do. He wouldn't roll the dice in the big games. But this team is just so talent rich. It is their time. They've got to get it done this season. Personally, I don't see any reason why they won't win the division and why they won't get back to where they want to be. I see them firmly 12-13. I don't think they're going to get to 14-17 because of how well I see the Rams doing in that division. I don't think the wins will be there. What do you think?
I would put them into 14-17, Connor. I think the Bengals are lonely in that table in front of me here. I think, unfortunately for the 49ers, there's a time in every kind of sport and era where there's always one team better. You look at Premiership over the last few years, Liverpool have been really strong, but unfortunately Manchester City have always been better. I recall Man United making 2 Champions League finals only to come up against Barcelona and Pep Guardiola. There's been GAA scenarios you could put in there. And the NFL is similar in a way. Like the 49ers have made 2 Super Bowls, played really efficient in both games against the Chiefs. They were 10 points up with 7 minutes to go against the Chiefs in Miami. Find a way to lose that one. They lose last year's one. Sometimes you just come up against teams and you just can't get over the line.
But it's a muffed punt return and a blocked extra point. And then doesn't matter what the Chiefs do.
And how many podcasts have we done and spoken about thereafter, and they'll lick their wounds and they'll come back. But this team are so good and so efficient, and they've got so many players in both offensively and defensively. I find it very difficult not to put them into the 14 category. I'm not sold on the Rams. I think there has to be someone from the NFC that can go that extra mile and really put the numbers up. But the only thing that would side against it for me is when you come to the end of the season, are you playing a full tilt because you've got the division wrapped up and potentially even the 1 seed. But I think teams will come against them this year. So I'm going to put them in the category 14-17.
Kieran?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. They're kind of like the NFC version of the Ravens. They're just loaded from top to bottom. I mean, everywhere you look, the only question you would have is the quarterback. And I mean, if ever the Mr. Irrelevant landed on his feet, it's Brock Purdy. I mean, you go from the last pick in the draft to being surrounded by Hall of Famers, basically. But he's the question for me. I mean, he rode his luck a lot last year. I don't want to say he's the weak link in this team, but I mean, the amount of close shaves he had throwing the ball, I mean, he should have been picked off in Detroit against Detroit in the playoff game. But I mean, we all know the offensive weapons they have, and we all know the defense they have, and Greenlaw and Bosa and Fred Warner. There's no reason why they can't, run through that schedule. And I got them going back to at least the conference game again.
No, we seem to be leaning towards 14-17, unless you say something different.
No, I can't disagree with the guys. I think this team is stacked from top to bottom, as they've already said. There's nothing new to add to it. For me, they're my Super Bowl favorite this year going in. I just think they have so many good players. Shanahan, okay, he's had a bit of unlucky times in Super Bowls, but he is just a master out there. And as Brock Purdy is kind of evidence of that, and that's not to take away from Purdy because he's the one on the field that's doing it, but that head coach is putting them into position to do it. And for me, this team is just head and shoulders up there above anyone in this division, even the Rams, who I think will do well, and has Super Bowl aspirations without question for me. And I think they'll definitely push on into the 14-17.
All right, we rounded off with the Kansas City Chiefs, Kieran. Down year last year, and they still win the Super Bowl, trying to do something that nobody's ever done before and go for 3 in a row. We all saw those pictures on the field with Patrick Mahomes. One minute he's celebrating the win, the next minute he's rallying the guys around saying, next year we're going for 3. We got to do 3. They're locked in. Could well be Travis Kelce's last year. You don't know how long Andy Reid is going to hang around. They've been very good, just like the Patriots were in their pomp, at creating reasons and creating incentives to win and making it seem like they're almost an underdog. And they did that, quite brilliantly last year when, they went on the road to Buffalo in particular, and they rallied the troops, and you hear Mahomes saying, this is what they wanted, this is what they wanted us, and now they got us. And that worked out pretty well. Whatever about the postseason, where maybe they rode their luck at times, it's kind of hard not to see them cutting like a knife through butter to the regular season, I have to say. Personally, I'm happy to put my flag up here and say I think they're the other team that will go in the 14-17 win category, particularly because of what's around them in the West. As I said, I'm not particularly high on the Chargers, definitely not high on the Broncos. Don't see the Raiders doing much either, so why wouldn't the Chiefs get to 14 wins?
Yeah, I mean, just like you mentioned, the Patriots, the startling similarities with the Patriots, who rode through the 2000s, and it looks like, unless Joe Cool can do something about it, it looks like they may do that in this decade too. I mean, there's nothing to argue that they're not going to go back. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is a generational talent. Travis Kelce is a generational talent. Chris Jones is a generational talent. I mean, they just have all these, just cornerstones around the team. The only strange thing is when you look at the wide receiver room, it's almost like it's a bunch of wide receiver 3s and 4s and practice squad players. I mean, Rashee Rice and that's if he even plays this year. Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney. I know they drafted Worthy, but it's a testament to Mahomes. He can develop all these quarterbacks, and they're not big players. They're prototypically slot receivers, a lot of them. McCole Hardman. I mean, he's turning these guys.
Don't we sometimes miss the point on this, which is that's because we think of Travis Kelce as a tight end, which he really isn't. Like, he's actually one of the best receivers in the league.
Yeah, but it's very similar to what Brady did with Edelman, or people like that. Not people who were outstanding wide receivers and not tall, but slot. They would give you a couple of yards and then get a few extra too. But there's nothing to argue that the Chiefs won't go back. I mean, they're the Chiefs. They are this generation's Patriots. And until somebody knocks them off the perch. However, saying that, we may go into that a little later. I don't see them repeating, but saying that they're going to get very close. But definitely 10 to 13 wins again.
No.
Yeah, look, I can't disagree with anything said there. I mean, you have Mahomes there, that kind of quarterback, that generational quarterback, literally generational quarterback, just changes everything. They have some good players. Defense as well. They've some good players there, but Kieran said it's like Brady and those New England years where he just made wide receivers better. He just took these kind of receivers that people maybe thought, well, why are they bringing him in, and turned him into a superstar for his time when he was there, and then it was the next one on, and that's what's happening there with Mahomes. Apart from Kelce, who obviously is just a top tight end / wide receiver there, as you mentioned. So for me, I think they'll go 10 to 13. I probably won't go to 14 to 17, but still, they're massive favorites to get back there again.
Brian, with the Olympics still in full swing, you're running the anchor leg now. The baton passes to you to bring us home. What do you think of the Chiefs?
I I love them for the 10 to 13 category. The reason I wouldn't put them into the 14 to 17 is because you look at some of the schedule. They play week 1 Ravens, week 2 Bengals. They've got Texans on the clock come December. They got the 49ers in there, and of course they've got the Bills. And whether I think the Bills are going to challenge or not, it's always a feisty game, and those games tend to go back and forth. But I would say, we're talking about wide receivers. Hollywood Brown is only 3 or 4 years removed from being a first-round pick by the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, he gets traded to the Cardinals. Doesn't really light it up there because of the nature of injuries with the quarterback. I think he's going to be a fantastic addition. 11 million for 1 year. Like, they're talking about a player that can go over the top that they haven't really had since Tyreek Hill. I think it's going to be a massive signing, and it'll only lead to them winning the division and going further in the playoffs. Whether they make the Super Bowl or not, I'm not entirely sure. 10 to 13 category, just can't squeak them into the 14. But I think we're all very much aligned. It's very much there for them if they want it to run it back.
Right, those are the tiers of a clown, tiers of clowns. They may well be, but it looks like we've ended up with them pretty much in a near perfect bell curve, evenly distributed across the categories, as was pretty much the case last year. I suppose that's the way it should be. But that is our tiered list for 2024, 2025. We will literally look back at it and weep as the season goes, no doubt. Wherever you get your podcast, you can find all 4 of the different 8-team breakdowns. Keep an eye on that graphic as the season progresses. 28 days, as Brian was saying, from the kickoff in the 2024-2025 season. We've lots more content coming at you before then, though. Stay with us on the Irish NFL Show.